Good morning and welcome to the roundup of 2022. It is December the something or other, 27th. So I thought it'd be time to do a roundup of what I've done this year, what gear I've used, what I've learned this year that might be useful to you. So let me just give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about cameras. We're going to talk about the Z6ii, the Z5, the D700, the D850 and the D500 because they are the cameras that I've used this year. We're going to talk about some lenses and that kind of stuff. And comparing cameras, what I use, why I use it, what the advantages are of certain cameras over others and that kind of stuff. All Nikon, of course, and all related to the cameras that I've just mentioned. First of all, so what have I done this year? So I'm a wedding photographer and I also shoot boudoir, family shoots, anything to do with people really. I've done a few fashion shoots, some portfolios, some corporate events and that kind of stuff. Anyway, so I've just been into Lightroom and clicked on all photos and then clicked 2022 and can you believe I've done 71,610 shots. A couple of days ago, just before Christmas, I also added up the number of weddings that I've done this year. And I was astounded, I have to tell you, to find that I've done 43 weddings this year. That's the most I've ever done. And it didn't feel like I'd done that many because July, August and September, which are normally the really, really busy months, were busy, but then weren't crazy. Not like last year, because after last year, after lockdown, when lockdown ended in July, it was just mental. It was crazy. It was like 3 weddings a week, every week for weeks and weeks and weeks. This year's been more spread out, but it's still a heck of a lot of weddings, more than I've ever done before, as I say. And I got a chance to try out lots of gear, lots of cameras, lots of lenses, lots of combinations of those sort of things. So I forgot to mention one camera, D780. So I started the year, January, and my first wedding, can you believe, was actually on the 8th of January. And I shot that with my D780 and the Z5. I'd used that for pretty well all of 2021. I found the combination of the 780 and the Z5 really good. I did, and to some extent still do, love a DSLR. I still like the feel, I like the optical viewfinder, I even like the sound of the shutter. But gradually through 2021, I moved more and more across to the Z5. So when I started this year in January with the same equipment, I did kind of have it in my head that at some point I would probably change the 780 for a Z6ii. And that happened in March. And my first shoot, I just had a look, was actually a boudoir shoot where I used the Z6ii. Sold the D780. So I then shot with the Z5 and the Z6ii for several months. Now I also, I've almost always had a D780, a D700. Apologise. But weddings are not solely about the images. Yes, you want to get great images, but also it's great to be able to capture those images fairly simply, reliably, quickly. And the D700 10 years ago was a great camera. It's still a great camera as far as images go. We'll talk about that more. But as far as usability, getting shots quickly, accurately, really low light, then the Z cameras do have an advantage over the D700. So at a wedding I might use the D700 for a few shots, selected shots, but not that many. The D700 for me now is more my my art camera. I use it for pretty well all my personal stuff. Again, we'll talk about that more shortly. As we went through the year, I fancied using a DSLR that maybe was up to the job of shooting weddings, and I got myself a D500. Reason being because I'd seen somewhere on YouTube It's quite an old lens. It's the Sigma, I think I've got this right, the Sigma 18-35 1.8 constant zoom lens, DX lens, which put on the D500 meant I had, what was it a 24-52 zoom lens at 1.8, and I thought that might be really good for use at weddings. So I bought that, got the camera with the lens, and I did probably 5 or 6 weddings with the D500 and the Z6ii, using the D500 for the majority of the shots. Actually, it turns out that the image quality of the D500 is brilliant in daylight. Once you start to get down to low light, where you're using ISO above maybe 1600, something like that, I found I got a lot of noise in the images. And I did a couple of weddings where it was in a dark church, into the evening, first dance and that sort of thing. This was in the summer, so it wasn't actually dark, but the curtains were pulled and that kind of stuff, so it was dark-ish. And I was probably up to 3,000-4,000 ISO. The noise was unbelievably bad compared to the Z6ii. It was just on a different planet, and decided that because of that, I really couldn't continue to use that. Of all the cameras I've used, mirrorless and DSLR, I have to say I think the D500 ticked every single box I could ever want. If only the image, the noise was better controlled, wasn't an issue, I would still have a D500 because I absolutely loved it. It was a bit smaller than the full frame DSLRs. It was really fast. I liked the fact the AF area covered the whole screen. I loved the lens. That was brilliant lens. I was sad to sort of have to say goodbye to it, but I said goodbye to it. Then just used my Zs for a couple of months, and then about 3 months ago I got a D850. In the hope that that would be a D500 but full frame, wouldn't have the noise problems. It did solve the noise problems. The images, low light, absolutely no problem at all. Focusing, brilliant. Love most things about the D850, except it's a 45 megapixel camera. I'm a wedding photographer. As you can see from the number of shots I've taken, I do probably 12 to 1500 shots per wedding. I can't do 1200, 1500 shots at 45 megapixels. It's just, I just don't need it. When I've used the D700 at weddings, 12 megapixels, they are perfectly fine. 12 megapixels is brilliant. I'd be very happy, and I'm actually considered using a D5, which is, what's that, 20 megapixels, which would be plenty. So the need for 45 megapixels just isn't there. But of course on the D850 you can choose medium RAW files, which are then around about 25 megapixels. Brilliant. But the downside is it goes from 14-bit files to 12-bit, and potentially, technically, in theory, you lose some image quality. And whilst in reality, comparing two shots side by side, 12-bit and 14-bit, it's probably going to be quite difficult to notice it, except in certain situations. And really that's not something I'm going to accept. I want the best I can give my clients all the time. So I wasn't happy about that. And if I'm honest, I was actually a little bit disappointed with the focusing. I actually find my Z6ii, followed very closely by the Z5, the focusing is actually every bit as good as the D850, and probably a little bit easier to use. Now, you might not agree, but I've obviously use the Z cameras extensively, and I've got to know the focusing really, really well. And I know what's going to work best in every situation that is in front of me. And if I do that side by side with the D850, sometimes there have been shots, for instance, I'll give you an example. My last but one wedding was a winter wedding. Obviously, it was only 2 weeks ago, less than that. It was dark by 4 o'clock. The wedding was in two teepees joined together, and the only lighting was some fairy lights dangling on strings. It was really, really dark. The speeches, the best man and dad and that kind of thing, had to get a torch to read their speeches. It was that dark. So I was able to stand there and shoot the speeches with the Z6ii and the D850 side by side. And whilst they both occasionally struggled, I found the D850 actually struggled a little bit more. Now, there's a ton of stuff on Facebook and YouTube, comments people make saying that the Z cameras, low light AF, isn't up to much. Sorry guys, it is. It's better. It's as good as, and occasionally better than the D850. If you're not getting those results, I'm sorry, you need to practice more, because the camera can do it. But if whilst we're talking about low light photography, the absolute best camera, if you're really, really into low light photography and you want the best camera that I've ever used for low light photography, then you need the D780. The D780, I don't know what it did, how it did it, what was different about it, but I can remember using that last year at a December wedding in Cambridge at a hotel with oak panelling everywhere and the odd wall light. It was incredibly dark. And I know that, getting off half the shots were probably at 25,600 ISO. It was stupidly dark. I don't recall having any focusing issues whatsoever. The noise in the photos, even at 25,600, was, it was okay. I had to do a little bit of noise reduction, but providing I didn't try and boost the shadows and do anything crazy to the photos, excuse me, I got shots which were perfectly fine, even zoomed in 100%. There was some noise, but it looked more like film grain. It was very pleasing, which explains why the D850 is in a box, because I'm actually selling that. It's not that much better than the two Z cameras in any respect to justify me keeping it. So that's going. And who knows, maybe next year I'll even go back and get a D780. I probably, out of all the DSLRs I've used, that's the DSLR that I've loved the most. Let's move on to the Z cameras. I've already mentioned the AF, the low light performance. What are the downsides of using Z cameras compared to DSLRs? Okay, battery life sucks. I've got 6 spare batteries with me that I take, so in total I've got 8 batteries. I don't ever get through 8 batteries, but it's nice just to have them there just in case. There are several things you can do to improve the battery life. You can turn off the rear screen, you can turn off image review and stuff like that. None of which makes a huge difference. It is what it is. You need spare batteries. If you're shooting more than about 400 shots, you've got to have a spare battery. Lenses. For the Z cameras, I've got a 24-70 f4, a 50mm 1.8, 35 1.8 and a 24 1.8. They are all super lenses if you want the modern look to your photos. What I'm saying about the modern look is sharp, crystal clear, contrasty, vibrant colours. Think mobile phone photo on steroids. For most of my wedding shots, that's not what I like. I much prefer something with more character, that plays around with the shadows and highlights, that has got some imperfections, that's got some vignetting around the air, stuff like that. That just gives, for me, it gives the photos, as I say, more feel, more, because weddings are about emotions and moments, and I think the old f-mount lenses do that best. So I prefer to use my f-mount glass, and one thing I will be doing, which I've got, oh, what have I got? 24, 35, 58, 85 and 105. I will probably get another FTZ adapter so that I can just use my Z cameras with the f-mount lenses, simply because I prefer the look. And if you're wondering, do f-mount lenses work as well on the FTZ adapter as they would on, say, D850 or something like that, or as well as the native Z-mount lenses? The answer is yes. There is absolutely no downside to using an FTZ adapter and using f-mount lenses. My favourite lens has got to be the 58 1.4G. That is just... all the f-mount lenses have got, well, all the prime lenses. I'm not talking about zooms. I don't use zooms, use primes, because the look, the feel, the quality, the whatever it is, it's what I'm looking for to give my clients. And all of the Nikon prime lenses, all of the I was going to say all of the professional ones, all the 1.4s, but actually thinking back to when I used to use 1.8s several years ago, they also lean that way as well. The 1.4 lenses, it's not about getting extra light, which some people say. It's just that those lenses, the 1.4 lenses, have got an extra bit of character. So, as I say, for next year, I will probably get another FTZ adapter and just use f-mount lenses. The two lenses I use at weddings are the 58 and the 24. So I'm just going to round this off by leaving you with a few images from weddings and things I've done last year. Just have a look through, just sit there, and I'll try and find some music that's bearable to listen to. And I'll wish you a very happy, a very successful 2023, and let's hope for all of us that it's a good year. Many thanks for watching, and all the best. Cheers for now.